Greetings, everyone, and welcome. I am very excited. I have avoided spoilers all day, but NHK did a poll about what is your favorite Final Fantasy series for Japan. So I have here pulled up, I don't know anything, but they voted for their favorite Final Fantasy, their favorite characters, their favorite bosses, their favorite music from the series. So I'm just gonna briefly take a look and kind of go through it, share my thoughts, and yeah, let's get into it. I have my favorite Final Fantasies. Um, what is yours? I'm very curious. But let's take a look. This may surprise us because Japan kind of views things differently. They do their own thing, you know? Even in games, even in the 14 community, they have their own strategies and everything. Let's take a look. Okay, so here we are. The results are in. Now, I have translated this, so there might be some janky translations through Google. This is a Japanese website, so it may be a little bit weird. So let's take a look. So we're gonna go real slow here. In first place, we have Final Fantasy X. That is a very interesting choice because I was thinking it would be 7. My favorite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy 7. I mean, just look at sales alone, right? But Final Fantasy X is interesting. It was a very exciting time. I mean, PlayStation 2 is one of the greatest consoles ever. Final Fantasy X was pushing some amazing things, amazing graphics for the time, the music, the colorful cast of characters. Although I feel like Titus isn't the best character in the series as like a main character. That is interesting. That is an interesting choice. I would not have guessed Final Fantasy X. Let's take a look at the second place. Final Fantasy VII. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Final Fantasy VII at second place. That's about right. I mean, we all knew it would be up there, right? I love Final Fantasy VII. I love that game. It is truly my favorite in the series. Final Fantasy VI is very, very close. It's always a battle with me, but Final Fantasy VII was just an absolute great game. Very touching, very beautiful, very well made, and very great for the time. Final Fantasy VI is third place. Interesting. Final Fantasy VI is one of the classic sort of Super Nintendo titles, and that's cool that they regard it very highly as well. It was a great game, you know, Magitech, incredible cast of characters, so many characters, the music, Terra, the Empire, Kefka, one of the greatest villains ever. Just a great game. I love this game. I love Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy IX, okay, very interesting, very interesting. That was a great game. That's not, it wouldn't be in my top 5, but I really enjoyed it. I love the sort of like the Shakespearean vibes, and the art was really interesting. I like Final Fantasy IX. Don't get me wrong, it's not a criticism. I wouldn't rate it in my top 5. Final Fantasy 14. That is interesting. That is interesting from Japan. I personally love Final Fantasy 14. I have played it since the 2.0 re-release. It is a great game, don't get me wrong, and it stands up as its own game. The only thing is like these other titles are complete, while Final Fantasy 14 is an MMO, so you know it's always getting patches. They're always adding to the story, they're updating things, they're borrowing things from other titles. It's kind of like its own weird thing, right? But I really feel like you are doing yourself a disservice if you do not at least experience the story of this game. It is an absolute great game, and Shadowbringers has been incredible. It's just a great game, and there's so much more to come, and it's interesting because people do shape your experience, but it can be played as its own. It can be experienced as its own standalone title, you know, because in a way it's kind of like the story of your character. You're the warrior of light, and it's a story about you in the world, and it's interesting. You know, we all like to exist in this shared sort of online space. So that's an interesting choice. Good on them. Good on them. Let's see. Number 6, Final Fantasy V. Okay, yep, I liked 5. I liked 5 quite a bit. 5 was awesome. Final Fantasy VIII. Nice. I love Final Fantasy VIII. I love it so much. It would probably be my third favorite because I like Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VI, and then it would be Final Fantasy VIII. I love that game. I think it's underrated. You know, it's not without its problems, of course, but Final Fantasy VIII was awesome. Squall was awesome. The vibe of it was cool. Gunblades, just the very opening of the game, just getting slashed across the face by Cypher. Just such a great game, you know? And this is all for fun, by the way. I mean, you know, if one scores higher than the other, that's fine. This is all for fun. Final Fantasy IV, okay. Very cool game. Very, very cool game. I enjoyed that one. 9th place. Final Fantasy XI, another MMO on the list. On the top list. Interesting. I didn't play 11 because I was kind of going through a World of Warcraft and EverQuest phase at the time. So I didn't play this one, but I've heard great things. I've heard great things. And Final Fantasy 15 at the 10th place. Huh, interesting. Where's Final Fantasy 12 at? 12 was quite good in my opinion. 12 was deserving of a place. Oh, and Final Fantasy 2. Where's Final Fantasy 2? It's nowhere to be found. Let's see. Now this goes down a little bit further. So we got Tactics, we got Final Fantasy 3, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 12 is 15th place. Where's Final Fantasy 2? 18th place, okay. Interesting, interesting. So these are the top Final Fantasies, according to Japan. Very interesting. Final Fantasy X is at the first place. This is some voting information here. Oh, I see what this is. So, this is a breakdown of the age, male, female, I'm assuming, and then the age range. So, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49. Interesting, okay. What about Final Fantasy VII? I'm very interested. Yeah, I mean, look at that. 30 to 39-year-olds, it's, yeah, half of them, almost. Very cool, very cool. Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, 30 to 39. I'm 33, by the way, so I'm kind of in this category. I'm just an old guy being nostalgic. And let's take a look at Final Fantasy 14. What do we got? Okay, very cool. Very, very, very cool. Okay, let's move on. What else do we have besides the series? Let's take a look at the characters, okay? So at first place we have Cloud. That is to be expected. That is to be expected. Yuna, very interesting. Not Tifa, not Eris? Come on. Where's Tifa? Yuna is alright. Yuna is cool. I like Yuna. Eris is 3rd place. Very interesting. Vivi for 4th place? Vivi was cool, but the 4th place of all time? Come on. Kitana's from 9. Emmet Selk. Some of these translations are going to be a little bit weird. Yeah, Emmet Selk was a cool character. Tita? I'm assuming Titus from 10, 7th place. Lightning, 8th place. That's cool. Since Lightning wasn't since 13 wasn't ranked at the top 10, that's interesting. We got Tifa at 9th place. I don't agree with that. I think Tifa should be 2nd or 3rd. And we got Zack. Where's Squall? Where's Zell? Where's Sephiroth? Sephiroth 11th place. And just some more. You can check out the website for yourself. Is Squall on here? Laguna. Yuffie. Renoa. Interesting, interesting. Estinian, 42nd place. Nice, okay, so the top 10. Cloud is first, with Zack being at 10th. Interesting, okay. Let's move on. We pretty much went through the bulk of it. Bosses and summons. Let's see, bosses and summons. Top 10 bosses and summons. Knights of the Round from Final Fantasy VII. Interesting. That was a really cool summon. Long ass animation, but really cool summon. Oop, Kefka. 2nd place. That's awesome. I love Kefka personally. Kefka is one of the greatest villains in the entire series. Kefka is one of the greatest villains in gaming history. Let me know if you agree. He's interesting, you know, he's a troubled guy and very, very like unpredictable and wild character, and in a way he succeeds in his quest, you know. He largely succeeds in taking over and achieving his goal, and just an all-around great villain. I really enjoyed Kefka. Let's see, number 3 is Hades from Final Fantasy 14, which is Emmett Selk. That's interesting that is the most favorites of all time. Of all time. That just goes to show you the strength of Final Fantasy 14. Very interesting. Anima from 10, okay. Omega from Final Fantasy 5. Valfair from 10. Ultimate Summon of Braska, also 10. Bahamut Type 0 from 7. Sildra from 5. And Sephiroth from Final Fantasy 7. Okay, interesting. Where's Ultimecia? Tsukuyomi? Whoa. Titan from Final Fantasy 14. Titan is awesome. I love that fight. Okay, very cool, very cool. We got a lot of the all-time greats here. Okay. A lot of Final Fantasy 14 entries. Very cool. So Final Fantasy 14 is going strong right now. And let's see, last but not least, the music. The music in the series is great. So iconic. At Xanarkand, to Xanarkand, Final Fantasy X. Yeah, very beautiful, very sad and beautiful music. I love this track. I've heard it everywhere. I love it. Battle of the Big Bridge. Okay. Eyes on Me from Final Fantasy VIII. That was a beautiful song. In Search of Friends, Final Fantasy VI. Flash from Final Fantasy 13. Can't remember what that one was. I'd have to listen again. One Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII, classic, 6th place. Eris theme. I love Eris theme. That would probably be my number 1. And the Prelude, just so classic and iconic. Melodies of Life from Final Fantasy IX. Yes, that is a beautiful song. Beautiful song. The main theme in general, yeah, definitely up there. That very deserving of top 10. Those Who Fight Further from Final Fantasy VII. Nice. I love it. I love it. Yeah, this was an interesting list. The character list, Vivi, come on. That's... But anyway, yeah, that's great. So this is our list. I am quite surprised by this. It's It's interesting. It's interesting that two MMOs are at the top of the list. That just goes to show you how much we yearn for like this shared online virtual world kind of space with our favorite things from the series, you know? Very cool. Very cool. That was my video, just going over the NHK poll from favorite Final Fantasy series in Japan and my thoughts, my reaction to it. I liked it. I love stuff like this. It was really fun to look at, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.